Joining us now to continue the conversation is former Mississippi governor, former RNC chairman, now founding partner at BGR Group, Haley Barbour. Governor, it's good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
Where do you stand on all this? Dick's Sporting Goods today, one of the largest sports retailers in the country, announcing it will stop selling assault-style rifles. Is that significant to you?
Well, I mean, it's a big industry. When you go into a gun store or a sporting goods store, sells guns, you're going to see that these assault-looking rifles are very prominent. And when you ask the store owner, they'll say it's because all the customers see it on television. They see it in the movies, and they are enamored of learning more about these guns. So if Dick's does this, or as Dick's does this, they're going to be turning their back on a fair amount of the market, and that's a private decision that they have to make as a business decision.
But so, isn't it worth having the discussion? I mean, I'm all about freedoms and my rights. I don't want my Second Amendment rights touched. But assault rifles, why do people need assault rifles?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a huge difference between people in urban areas and people in rural areas.
Okay.
When you get in a rural area, you could be 30 minutes from the nearest deputy sheriff. And if something happens at your home or in the area where you are to one of your neighbors, it could be, like I say, 30 minutes before law enforcement can get there.
Okay. That's
so people need a way to protect themselves, their families, and their property. And let's don't kid ourselves. If you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns.
Good point.
So. And Governor Barbour, I think that what people just want in terms of this gun safety debate is they want evidence-based decisions, because people always point to the, quote, assault weapons ban from 1994 to 2002. And if you look at all of the studies done, that ban had a negligible impact on gun crime. Instead, those studies point to improved background checks. Now, that was 18 weapons. These assault weapons were banned for really cosmetic reasons. You look at this new assault weapons ban that was introduced by the Democrats in the House, and the way they start defining these weapons, they clearly are going after semi-automatic handguns as well. That is clearly the direction, and proponents of the Second Amendment, that's what they've always been worried about. And people need to understand that's why there's pushback on broadly banning classes of guns in this country.
Well, there's no question that probably there are more semi-automatic handguns in the United States than there are long rifles. Because that's the way we don't have as many revolvers as we had when I was growing up, and more are semi-automatic. But you make a very important point. We need to look at everything. We need to look at mental health. Mental health is a gigantic issue here, and the failures of law enforcement in this case are really mind-boggling. How many times over and over and over was this young man reported, and yet nothing was ever done about it? Which says, as the young man said on tape a while ago, we are going to have to harden schools. How much we do it and how we do it, whether President Trump's idea of let school teachers be armed, of course, I'm sure what he means is only ones who want to, only ones who volunteer, only ones that take the training. But even if you do that, you're still going to need stronger law enforcement in the schools to protect the people there. Soft targets attract this kind of terrible thing, like the church in Texas, where, again, the shooter should have been known and should have never been able to buy a gun, but our system broke down. We just got to make our system work better.
But Governor Mary Kissel here, it seems to me like the companies are interested in virtue signaling, and the politicians the same. You know, it is a complex issue. You mentioned mental health. There's a balance to be struck between the privacy of the individual and the ability to notify law enforcement. That's a nuanced, sophisticated conversation to have. Is anybody having that conversation?
Well, they need to be, because if your next door neighbor's a grumpy old man, that doesn't mean he's a threat to society. But if your next door neighbor behaves like this young boy, this 19-year-old kid did, then absolutely law enforcement or some form of the judicial system needs to come into this. And his rights of privacy do not exceed the right of the public to be safe.
Yeah, these are all really important points that you make, Governor. Let me ask you about immigration, because ICE is now saying that its agents arrested 150 illegal immigrants in the greater San Francisco Bay Area since the weekend. That despite the fact that Oakland's mayor alerted the public to the operation, that ICE agents were coming. This comes as a federal judge in that rejected a legal challenge to the Trump administration's plans to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, essentially giving the project a green light. President Trump tweeted about this morning. He says, "I have decided that sections of the wall that California wants built now will not be built until the whole wall is approved." Big victory yesterday, the president says, with rulings from the courts that allow us to proceed. Our country must have border security. Governor, your reaction, what about the Oakland mayor alerting the illegals that ICE managers were coming for them?
Well, I thought almost everything she said was unbelievable. I mean, let's just suppose, for the sake of argument, Memphis, Tennessee said, we're not going to enforce the civil rights law. I mean, that's what she said. We're not going to enforce the immigration law. She said specifically, it's a federal law and we don't have to abide by it. I mean, if that were to happen to the civil rights law, this country would be up in arms, and rightly so. But this sanctuary city business, it puts people at risk, and it puts people at risk who visit Oakland, California, not just the people that live there. And certainly there are states' rights in our country. We do have a 10th Amendment. But the idea that they can just turn up their nose at federal law is pretty far out, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think it's incredible, actually. Extraordinary how they get away with that, just ignoring federal law. And continues with the sanctuary city. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Maria.
Good to see you, sir. Haley Barbour there.